Hey guys, tonight we're time traveling somewhere wonderfully mundane, into the dusty, surprisingly bureaucratic world of ancient Sumer. You are not a mighty king, a high priest, or a heroic warrior. Nope, you're something even rarer, a Sumerian accountant. That's right, your job is clay tablets, tallies, and grain quotas. Glorious. The sun hasn't even crested the rooftops of and already your small, single-room home is filling with soft gold light, slipping through the reed mat over your doorway. You stir under a woven wool blanket, lying on your baked mud sleeping platform. There's a familiar tickle in your nose. Ah, yes, the dust. You inhale, sneeze, and dislodge at least 3 cobwebs from the ceiling. Your bed is really more of a raised rectangle of hardened clay with a rush mat on top, comfortable in the way a brick is comfortable. But it's home. You sit up slowly, stretching your shoulders, and immediately regretting how uneven that mat is. Every morning you swear you'll fix it. Every night you lie on it like a fool. As you rub sleep from your eyes, you glance around your modest living space. One wall is lined with clay storage pots. The faint smell of dried onions wafts up from the open one in the corner. Another wall has your prized possessions, your stylus, wooden, smoothed by years of use, your seal, with a rather tasteful lion carving, and of course a small pile of cracked tablets from work you brought home but never finished. Oops. You look outside. The streets are still mostly empty, save for a goat or two sniffing at something unmentionable near your doorway. You scratch at your arm absent-mindedly and make a mental note to see if the priest still has that crocodile dung ointment for skin rash. Yes, it's real. No, it doesn't smell great. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, if you're listening from a far-off corner of the world, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you all tune in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You roll off the bed and your feet hit the cool, cracked floor. You pad to the basin near the wall, a shallow stone bowl filled with water you left out last night. You splash your face with a few palmfuls. The water is already slightly warm from the rising heat of the day. No soap, of course, but you rub your teeth with a frayed stick soaked in salt water. You miss one tooth in the back. It's probably rotting anyway. Breakfast is already waiting in a large earthenware pot beside the hearth. You ladle out a scoop of barley porridge, thick, gray, and aggressively bland. There's a single chopped date on top, a treat. You drizzle a little sesame oil if you're feeling extravagant, which today you're not. As you eat, you sip from your beer jug. This isn't the kind of beer you'd Instagram. It's thick, sour, barely filtered, and best consumed with a straw. You gag a little. Every day it tastes like bread and regret. Still chewing your barley mush, you glance at the corner where your sandals sit, worn with reeds poking out, slightly chewed on by some unknown nighttime creature. One of them still has a blob of dried temple glue stuck to the strap. You tried fixing them last week. You failed. You pull on a linen kilt, knotting it loosely around your waist, and then a slightly fancier sash, because you're going to the temple archives and you want to look at least vaguely competent. Your seal goes around your wrist. Without it, you might as well be nobody. Just before leaving, you touch the small figurine of Nabu by the door. He's the god of scribes and wisdom, your professional mascot. You mutter a sleepy prayer, "Please no surprise audits today." Out on the street, it's warming fast. The air already smells like a mix of river mud, roasted fish, and something vaguely sweet, possibly date syrup. You step over a puddle of unknown origin and nod to your neighbor, who is unsuccessfully trying to herd 3 runaway ducks. You offer no help. You've done your time. As you walk, your sandals slap against the dry earth, sending up little puffs of dust. Children run past, one waving a stick like a sword, the other shouting about stolen melons. One of them trips, falls, and bounces back up as if gravity were optional. You sigh. Youth. The alleys wind and twist between houses made of sun-dried mud brick, some 2 stories tall, their upper floors jetting out above the streets. You have to duck once to avoid a low-hanging laundry line strung with linens that have seen better centuries. Eventually, the temple appears, rising above the roofs like a stack of square cakes, each layer smaller than the last. The ziggurat. Its bricks are the same color as the sand, but the sheer scale is always impressive. At its base, the administrative wings bustle like a particularly chaotic beehive. Priests in robes, farmers with carts of barley, and other scribes like you all mix in the shaded portico. There's even a camel tied lazily to a post, chewing with the vacant expression of someone who's read too many ledgers. You pass the gatekeeper, who barely looks up. He knows you, and more importantly, he knows how boring your job is. No one fakes being an accountant. You nod, duck inside, and head straight for the archives. The scent hits you first. Baked clay, ink, and something faintly metallic. The room is lit by small oil lamps hanging from the walls, their flickering light giving every shadow a jittery personality. Rows of low shelves hold thousands of tablets organized with maddening precision, at least in theory. In practice, someone borrowed 5 from the barley imports shelf last week and returned them to religious donations. It's still a sore subject. You sit at your assigned desk, a low stone slab with a small box of styluses and your work pile for the day. It's hefty. You suspect they gave you extra because you complained about the fish rations last week. Typical revenge. And here you are. Welcome to your glamorous Sumerian life. You're educated, literate, and underpaid. Your hands are already stained with clay, there are at least 20 entries to transcribe, and you just know someone will argue about the correct symbol for goat droppings before lunch. But hey, at least you're not out hauling bricks in the sun. The workday begins, as it always does, with you eyeing your stack of clay tablets like a man facing down a very dry avalanche. The first one is cracked on one corner, the script faded just enough to make you squint. It appears to be a barley receipt from 3 weeks ago, signed, sealed, and moderately smeared by what smells suspiciously like sheep grease. Classic. You set it aside and reach for your stylus. It's made of smoothed wood, worn into a gentle curve that fits your fingers perfectly. The pointed end is for drawing lines, the blunt wedge for forming the tiny wedge-shaped cuneiform marks that rule your entire life. You glance over your reference tablet, the one with all the standard signs. There are hundreds. Some look like tiny arrows, others like badly drawn birds. You suspect the original inventors were just doodling until someone said, "Hey, that kind of looks like goat. Let's make it official." Your next task? Fish rations. Always fish. You're responsible for recording daily disbursements of dried fish to temple workers. There are dozens of categories: priests, guards, potters, granary sweepers, cat tamers. Yes, that's a thing. You scratch out a careful list on a fresh, flat clay tablet, soft and cool to the touch. You shape the wet clay with the edge of your palm to make it clean and even. Then, tap, tap, tap. You begin. 1 dried fish for the junior guard. 2 for the granary overseer. 4 for the high priest's cousin's nephew's best friend. You pause. 4? Really? Historians still argue whether these exaggerated rations reflect actual corruption or just the Sumerian version of creative accounting. You suspect it's both. Your stylus skips slightly over a speck of grit in the clay, leaving a faint scar. You scrape it away with the edge of your seal and correct the symbol. It's tedious work, but oddly satisfying. You feel like a tiny god, creating order out of chaos, one barley line at a time. As you work, a low murmur builds in the background. That would be Kudor, the senior scribe, droning through his morning mantra of complaints. "Too many goats in the courtyard," he mutters, not for the first time. "The ink smells like boiled turnips. And, most importantly, no one respects us anymore." You nod sympathetically, not looking up. It's part of the ritual. You get through 6 tablets before it's time for breakfast part 2, the edible one. You reach into your satchel and retrieve a small reed-wrapped bundle. Inside, date paste rolled in crushed barley and, if you're lucky, slightly stale figs. It's squishy, sweet, and a little gritty, like dessert sandpaper. Just as you're about to take a bite, a clay tablet slaps down beside you. You flinch, nearly swallowing your treat whole. It's Dumuzi, the delivery runner, all limbs and dust and wild energy. He says, "Urgent from the livestock division. Goats again." You accept the tablet and examine the cuneiform. It's rough, clearly written by someone who was either in a hurry or actively angry at clay. Apparently, someone's miscounted the palace's sheep again. The document insists that the number of lambs delivered does not match the number that were blessed in the last lunar ceremony. You sigh. Of course it doesn't. Sheep, you've learned, are never truly countable. They wander, they bleat, they escape, and somehow every time the king's herds are tallied, a few have mysteriously disappeared. You don't ask questions, you just log the discrepancy and mutter a few safe curses under your breath. As you begin transcribing the numbers, you notice something odd. The total is written in base 10, not base 60, the standard Sumerian numerical system. Who does that? This might not seem like much, but it's like finding a spreadsheet where someone decided to do the math in emoji. You underline it twice with your stylus and jot a quick note to ask Kudor about it later. He lives for this kind of nonsense. You continue your morning slog. More sheep records, a shipment of baskets, 3 entries about broken plows, one of which appears to have been accidentally sat on by a priest. You smile at that. A tiny miracle in tablet form. Just before midday, something glorious happens. A delivery of fresh clay. You stand and stretch your back with a satisfying crack, then walk to the central storage area where the clay slabs are kept. A young apprentice is already there, unloading them from a wooden tray with all the grace of a collapsing duck. "Be careful," you say, a bit sharper than intended. "That one's already drying out." He shrugs. "They're all like that. The river's been low, too salty." Of course, it's always something. Fresh clay means you can finally copy the backlog of fish rations without your stylus punching through the tablet every 3rd word. You select a few of the better-looking slabs, soft and cool to the touch, and carry them back to your desk like a mother hen gathering eggs. Back at your station, you pause for a moment. You have a choice. Continue working through the pile, or begin organizing tomorrow's inputs. You glance at your supervisor's empty desk. He hasn't shown up since the barley scandal. I suspect he's in hiding. Sensible man. You decide to pace yourself. You carefully copy over the revised sheep tally, switching back into base 60 and correcting the rogue symbols. You hum as you work, a low tune that echoes faintly against the stone shelves. The smell of clay and lamp oil thickens in the warm air. Somewhere nearby, someone drops a tablet. It shatters. There's a long, defeated sigh. You nod in respect. It's not even noon, and already your fingers are caked in drying clay, your stylus tip is worn down to a stub, and your legs are beginning to go numb from sitting on the unforgiving stone bench. But you press on. Why? Because if you don't record every goat and fish and very confused plow in this city, who will? And besides, there's a rumor going around that the temple might finally order more comfortable benches. Historians still argue whether this actually happened, or whether it was just the ancient equivalent of, they're fixing the air conditioning next week. You're not holding your breath. Your stomach makes the executive decision that it is, in fact, lunchtime. You set down your stylus and flex your clay-stained fingers. One of your knuckles cracks loudly enough to startle a nearby apprentice who looks at you like you just summoned a demon from the archives. You give him a tired nod, which in your language translates roughly to, "Don't worry, you'll be this broken soon too." Lunch isn't some grand affair, but you're honestly just grateful to leave your desk. You make your way toward the inner courtyard of the temple complex, a sun-dappled square surrounded by thick columns and crawling vines. At the center sits a circular well, shaded by a slatted roof and guarded, of course, by two surly temple cats. One of them eyes you with the disdain only cats and maybe scribes can muster. You find a place along the edge of the well, next to an old potter who's already 3 bites into something that smells like fried onions and burnt sesame. You untie your satchel and withdraw today's prize, a leftover barley cake wrapped in fig leaves. It's slightly stale and strangely shaped, as if it lost a fight with gravity, but you tear into it anyway. You chew in slow silence, watching a pair of temple servants squabble over the last seat in the shade. They resort to passive-aggressive fanning and subtle elbow jabs. You admire the strategy. You once settled a dispute over an ox ledger using less grace. The conversation around the courtyard buzzes with the usual mix of gossip, complaints, and overly detailed descriptions of someone's fungal rash. You catch snippets. Said the king's astrologer forgot the moon phase again? The priestess' daughter was seen buying perfume outside the temple quarter? Scandalous. And then the whole jar of lentils just burst. You nod quietly. Lentils do that. As you nibble your way through the rest of your lunch, one of your colleagues from the southern district, a fellow scribe named Tizkar, plops down beside you. He smells faintly of ink and regret. "Did you hear?" he mutters, mouth already full of roasted locusts. You raise an eyebrow. That's how all the best stories start. "They lost 3 donkeys." You blink. "The tax office?" "No, the palace. Royal caravan headed toward Kish. Sandstorm came through and poof, 3 donkeys vanished. One of them carried the backup ceremonial beer ladle." "That's going to be an entry on someone's tablet," you murmur. Tizkar leans in. "Not ours, hopefully." Historians still argue whether that incident led to an actual diplomatic insult or whether the whole thing was quietly smoothed over with a bonus crate of incense and a new ladle carved overnight. As you both finish your meals, a young temple page makes the rounds, handing out small cups of cool water from the well. You sip slowly. The water tastes faintly of limestone and moss, but it's better than the beer, which continues to haunt your mouth like yeasty ghosts. You stretch your legs again, squinting up at the sun. The light is harsh now, casting hard-edged shadows across the courtyard. It's only halfway through the day, but already the heat settles on your shoulders like a thick, invisible cloak. You consider slipping away to nap in the shade of the granary, but your conscience drags you back toward the archives. Or maybe it's the sound of your supervisor's sandals slapping somewhere nearby. Either way, nap denied. Back at your post, you're greeted by a new pile of tablets. You recognize the seal on the top one, the civi's irrigation overseer. You sigh. That can only mean one thing: flood reports. You crack the first tablet open and skim the data. It's a mess. There's a complaint about collapsed canals, a suspiciously optimistic yield prediction for date palms, and an entire section where someone tried to draw a map using cuneiform symbols arranged in a circle. You blink at it for a long time. It still doesn't make sense. And now begins the truly thrilling part of your day, converting vague complaints and squiggles into official records. You pull out a fresh tablet, press it flat with your palm, and begin. The canal near the sycamore tree has overflowed again. The mud brick retaining wall was probably never properly repaired again. And the field downstream waterlogged to the point of unusability. The farmer claims it was sabotaged by jealous neighbors, which is the Sumerian equivalent of "my dog ate it." Still, you dutifully enter every detail: date, location, complainant's name, and whether the priest offered a goat or just a strongly worded prayer. As you continue translating the records, you notice something odd in the report, a reference to frogs falling from the sky. You stop. Read it again. Yes, it's definitely in there. You scribble a margin note. Check weather tablets for recent omens. Because if frogs were falling from the sky, someone, somewhere, definitely blamed it on sorcery. You reach for the second flood tablet. This one is drier, in both clay and tone, a straightforward update about canal clearances near the western fields. It includes a list of workers paid in beer and onions, standard wages, and a curious note about one worker being dismissed for arguing with a heron. You pause. Herons are, as a rule, unflappable. What could this man have possibly done? You'll never know, but you make a mental note to ask around. That's the kind of detail that lingers. Just as you're finishing that entry, Kudor saunters over, hands behind his back, with the look of someone about to ruin your afternoon. "Got a special one for you," he says, dropping a tablet with unnecessary flair. You look down. The seal on this one is royal. "Oh no," you mutter. "Yep, it's from the palace stewards, monthly audit." He grins. "Enjoy!" You rub your temples. The palace audits are legendary. They are long, complex, and always include at least one impossible question. Last month's: estimate the storage capacity of a granary with no floor and no roof. You're still not sure if it was a metaphor. You brace yourself and begin reading. It's worse than you feared. This one's not just grain inventory, it includes textile counts, livestock adjustments, and a correction regarding ceremonial goose feathers. You actually groan. Goose feathers are the worst. They're stored in wax-sealed jars and tend to stick together, making them a nightmare to quantify. You take a breath, dip your stylus, and get to work. The audit won't finish itself, and if you do it wrong, you'll be summoned to explain the difference between partially fermented lentils and not yet fermented lentils. Again. But at least you're not counting bricks, or herding ducks, or, God forbid, arguing with herons. The palace audit stretches before you like the Tigris River in flood season, wide, muddy, and absolutely full of things trying to drown you. You're halfway through tallying up the linen tunics distributed to temple staff when your stylus breaks. Not dramatically, not in a satisfying snap, just a sad little splinter right at the tip, like the stylus equivalent of giving up. You stare at it for a long moment. This is fine. This is completely fine. You fish out your backup stylus from your satchel. It's shorter, fatter, and has a suspicious nibble mark on one side, probably from that time you accidentally left it near the bread. It'll do. Back to it. Tunics, tunics, tunics. 17 to the acolytes, 12 to the temple guards. One oddly specific note that reads, "One tunic, unusually long, gifted to royal astrologer for services rendered during eclipse panic." You chuckle. Historians still argue whether that eclipse panic was legitimate fear or just a convenient excuse for day drinking. Your eyes start to blur as you skim the next tablet. It's a nightmare of numbers, hastily scratched and clearly inked in a moving cart. There's an entry about goat milk barrels, some of which were apparently lost in transit due to excessive enthusiasm. You're not sure if that means someone drank them or they exploded. The royal seal on the corner is faint but unmistakable. You sigh. You'll need to record every single unit with precision, which means converting odd units like half basketfuls and a handful minus a thumb into something your own temple math system recognizes. The Sumerian love of base 60 arithmetic comes back to haunt you again. You pause for a moment and glance at the archive shelves, row after row of clay tablets, neatly filed in straw-lined baskets. Each one represents someone's day, someone's error, someone's miracle shipment of lentils arriving just in time for the feast of Nin Hersog. It's both comforting and exhausting. You get back to work. Next up, a complaint from the palace scribes about a shipment of subpar incense. Smells like boiled onions and despair, someone scrawled in the margin. That was clearly not an official part of the document, but you admire the passion. You transcribe the entry anyway and add your own comment, just to keep the tone consistent. Recommend source reevaluation. Strongly. A runner hurries by outside holding a clay tablet aloft like it's a loaf of bread about to be stolen by the wind. Probably urgent, probably not your problem. You try to ignore it. But the runner turns and heads your way. Of course he does. Message from the granary office, he pants. They need your verification. You reach for the new tablet like a man accepting an unsolicited gift basket full of angry bees. Apparently there's been a dispute between two adjacent storehouses. One claims the other is siphoning off grain by swapping out clay seals during midday prayers. That's about as illegal as things get in your line of work. You frown. You'll need to verify the seals, which means standing up, walking, moving your actual legs. You groan, stand, and leave the comfort of your bench. The air outside the archive room is dry and pungent, thick with dust and sun-baked donkey. You pass by a row of apprentices scrubbing dried ink off old tablets for recycling. One of them sneezes so hard he nearly drops his slate. You salute him in solidarity. The granary office is only a few rooms away, but it feels like crossing a desert. You arrive sweaty, irritable, and immediately bombarded by two shouting supervisors. He changed the seal when I was washing my hands. You never had the original seal. It was a rock with a bird on it. You raise a hand. Stop. Breathe. Show me the tablets. They thrust two nearly identical slabs into your hands. Both have the same inventory: 120 sacks of barley, 3 jars of lentil stew, 2 baskets of fish, and 1 ceremonial spoon, bronze. But the seal impressions differ. One is clearly older, faded edges, less detail. The other, crisp, fresh, slightly smudged thumbprint on the corner. Suspicious! You compare both seals carefully. The motifs are the same: a lion, a mountain, and a rather surprised goat. But the depth of the carving suggests the newer one isn't just a repressing. It's a whole different seal. "Where's your seal now?" you ask the second man. He hesitates. "Lost it during the last flood." You arch a clay-caked eyebrow. "The flood was 3 months ago." "Still wet," he mutters. You recommend that both seals be remade and registered again, this time with a scribe present. They grumble but nod. Crisis averted, sort of. You shuffle back to your desk, wondering how much energy you have left. Your tunic is sticking to your back, your ankles hurt. You're pretty sure you've developed what ancient Mesopotamians referred to as scribe's hip, a cramping ache from too much time hunched over tablets. A breeze finally drifts through the open window. It brings the scent of wet clay, oil lamps, and roasted garlic from the temple kitchens. Your stomach gurgles. Dinner isn't far now. You promise your body it'll get lentils soon. It remains unconvinced. Back at your desk, you resume the palace audit. You're now deep in the section labeled miscellaneous ritual items. It includes 2 ivory combs for festival dancers, 1 golden beard tip, missing, possibly stolen, 8 jars of scented oil labeled "not for mortal use." That last one you underlined 3 times. Not because it's particularly relevant, but because you want to remember to ask Kudor what it smells like. You work steadily through the rest of the list, your stylus moving in hypnotic rhythm. Tap, wedge, swipe. Tap, wedge, swipe. You enter a kind of trance. Clay dust clings to your fingernails. Your back is now one with your bench. You are the tablet. The tablet is you. Eventually, you finish the last line. You set the tablet aside, marking it with your seal, a small, elegant impression of a horned owl and a barley stalk. It's the one part of your day that feels truly yours. You lean back, breathe. Somewhere outside, a bell rings. The sun is beginning to dip behind the western wall, casting long golden shadows across the courtyard. You survived the audit. The missing goats, the tunics, the fraud, the fish. But the day isn't over yet. The bell's chime still lingers in the hot, dust-laden air as you stretch your legs beneath the low desk. Your knees crack like dry reeds. Nothing serious, just a reminder that you've been sitting too long, living too old for your actual age. This is the Sumerian accountant's paradox. You're barely 30, but your bones have already filed for early retirement. You take a moment to stand, slowly, carefully, like a badly balanced clay figurine trying to achieve verticality without toppling. Then you begin the slow trudge toward the temple kitchens, because it's late afternoon now and food is calling. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to suggest that if you don't feed yourself soon, you may begin nibbling your own stylus. The corridors of the temple complex are quieter now. Most of the scribes have either slipped away or are loitering in corners pretending to finish work. You pass a young apprentice sprawled near the doorway, clay smudged across his forehead like war paint. He looks up at you with the exhausted blankness of someone who's just copied the same date palm inventory 10 times and is now questioning reality itself. You give him a small, sympathetic nod. He blinks once, then continues staring into the middle distance. The smell of the kitchens reaches you before the doorway does. Roasted onions, ground garlic, and that ever-present tang of fermented grain. It's not exactly mouth-watering, but it does its job. Inside the kitchen, a half-dozen temple staff are bustling about, stirring massive clay pots and shouting at each other over piles of lentils. One is fanning a small cooking fire with a woven mat and muttering curses in Sumerian that involve multiple livestock and a family of toads. You stand awkwardly at the edge until one of the younger cooks notices you. She gestures wordlessly toward a corner table where bowls of food are laid out in neat rows, part of the daily temple rations. You pick up a bowl, a heap of stewed lentils, always lentils, a slab of barley bread still warm from the oven, and 2 slices of pickled cucumber. Next to it sits a cup of watered beer, of course, because heaven forbid you drink actual water more than twice a day without someone accusing you of weakness. You take your food to the edge of the courtyard, settle on a low bench, and finally relax into the late afternoon quiet. The sun is mellow now, casting long shadows and soaking the clay walls in soft amber. Across from you, an old man feeds crumbs to a one-legged pigeon. The pigeon looks incredibly satisfied with this arrangement. You chew your food slowly. The lentils are better than usual, spiced with something citrusy that reminds you faintly of river reeds and orange peels, a rare treat. The barley bread is dense but comforting, especially dipped in the lentils. The cucumber, however, is pickled to a degree you might classify as aggressive. You eat it anyway. Nearby, Kudur slumps down beside you, his own bowl in hand. "No more audits," he says. You raise an eyebrow. Ever? Until tomorrow. You both stare into the middle distance, chewing in silence. A pair of novice musicians walk past, plucking out a lyre and tapping on a handheld drum. The sound is pleasant enough, if a little chaotic. They stop near a group of girls preparing festival wreaths and start playing something vaguely celebratory. You don't recognize the tune, but it involves enough missed notes that the one-legged pigeon flaps away in protest. You hear about the priest's nephew? Cooter asks suddenly. Which one? The one who accidentally sacrificed the wrong goat. You nearly choke on your beer. Again? Yup, this time it was the fertility goat, not the weather goat. Historians still argue whether those were ever different goats, you mumble. Cooter snorts and washes down a mouthful of bread with a long sip of beer. He's being reassigned to amphora stacking. That's rough. He says it's a promotion. You finish your meal just as the temple bell rings again, its tone softer this time, the soon-to-sunset warning. It means that if you've got any last work to do, you'd better get it done fast, or risk being roped into ceremonial cleanup duty after prayers. You consider slipping away to the riverbank, maybe sit by the reeds for a while, let the breeze rinse the numbers out of your head. But duty, like clay, has a way of clinging. Instead, you head back inside the temple complex and make your way toward the storage rooms. You've been meaning to verify the last of the year's fig imports, and frankly, you trust the storage records about as far as you can throw a full amphora, and that's not far, considering last time you tried, you nearly pulled your back. Inside the storeroom, the scent hits you first. Old figs, damp straw, and a faintly sweet moldiness that seems to live permanently in the cracks of the walls. Rows of jars and baskets are stacked along shelves, each labeled, sealed, and suspiciously sticky. You pick up the nearest jar and check the seal. It's intact, but you open it anyway and give it a sniff. Yep, figs. Also a small beetle colony. You sigh. Nature always finds a way. You open the ledger tablet nearby and begin matching the inventory. Basket after basket, jar after jar. Some are underweight, some are overfull, which probably means someone padded the numbers with extra straw. You make your notations carefully. You're the only one in the room, and for once, it's peaceful. The storeroom is warm and quiet, and the clay walls mute the sounds of the temple outside. As you finish, you notice a jar tucked behind one of the shelves. It's not labeled, not sealed. You gently pull it out and peer inside. Figs. But also, at the bottom, what looks like a tiny scroll of bark rolled tightly and half buried under dried fruit. You fish it out, unfold it slowly, and squint at the faded writing. It's not inventory. It's a poem. Badly written, amateurish, possibly composed by someone drunk on beer and heartache. You read it anyway. She carried the figs in her left hand and my heart in her right. I offered onions, but she chose the merchant instead. You blink, then laugh quietly. Some forgotten scribe left this here, maybe on a dare, or maybe it was meant to be found one day by someone equally fig-sick and tired. You tuck it into your tunic and finish your check. The sun is almost gone now. Time to close the books? For today at least. Dusk in Ur drapes itself slowly, like a wool shawl over tired shoulders. The sandstone walls soften to rose and gold, shadows stretching like lazy cats across courtyards and archways. You step out of the storeroom, ledger still warm in your hand, and breathe in the evening. Part dust, part baked fig, part donkeys in denial about bedtime. You should be done for the day, technically. You've logged your audits, confirmed your fig suspicions, and even survived a near-poetic ambush, but your feet don't take you home. Instead, they carry you across the courtyard, toward the ziggurat steps, pulled by some stubborn accountant impulse that refuses to let go until every iota of doubt is double-checked. You tell yourself it's nothing major, just one last look at the temple's cattle records, a quick scan, in and out. Lies. The upper floors are quieter now, priestly chambers darkened, ceremonial doors bolted with the kind of reverence usually reserved for funerals and bread recipes. You step by a statue of Enki, god of wisdom and fresh water, and silently request both. You don't get either, but you like to pretend he listens. Inside the temple library, the air changes. It's cooler, older. The clay tablets here smell less of handling and more of history. This is the good stuff, the original records, not the messy copies you've been slogging through all day. You step lightly so your sandals don't echo. The shelves here aren't shelves so much as deep nooks carved into the stone itself, packed tight with straw-lined boxes and baskets labeled in 3 different dialects of Sumerian, 2 of which are only used when someone's being particularly pretentious. You scan the shelves until you find what you're after. Livestock allocations, Year of the Tall Flood. A classic. You pull it out gently. The tablet is massive, clearly not meant to be held by someone after a full bowl of lentils and barley bread. You balance it on a wooden stand, tilt it toward the lantern's flicker, and begin reading. At first, all seems fine. 24 oxen distributed between 3 temple farms, 2 bulls reassigned to the festival parades, 1 cow gifted to a retiring priestess, all properly marked, sealed, and sealed again just for good measure. But then, a gap. Right between the entry for 6 calves born during the eclipse week and 3 oxen transferred to the governor's estate, there's a strange line. The writing changes. Smaller, more rushed. It reads, also, 2 oxen not recorded, sent south for urgent ritual. You frown. Ritual. No date, no seal, no confirming entry elsewhere, just that single vague note. That's not how this works. Rituals always require verification, and oxen aren't exactly pocket change, they're the crown jewels of temple inventory. You dig deeper. 3 tablets later, buried under a moldy index of temple kitchen supplies, including a suspiciously specific recipe for onion honey paste, you find something else. A minor priest's journal, half erased, possibly used as a coaster. It reads, and the 2 oxen left with the scribe, no proper notice. Claimed, a dream from Nanshe told him it was urgent. Carved the dream into soapstone, then left it in the ziggurat's base vault. You pause. Nanshe, goddess of justice, prophecy, and fish. Dreams from her aren't unheard of, but they're supposed to be interpreted, not immediately acted upon by panicked scribes. You debate going home. Your back hurts, your legs hurt, your stylus is crying in your satchel, but you're also 2/3 into a minor mystery, and if there's one thing that keeps an accountant awake at night, it's unresolved oxen. You head for the vault. Now, let's pause for a moment and consider this is a terrible idea. Not because you're going to be attacked by ancient curses or wandering ghosts, those are reserved for royal tombs and drunken myth-tellers, but because the ziggurat's base vault is a bureaucratic nightmare. No one goes down there unless they're told, or unless they're trying to hide something. The vault is accessed through a narrow passage behind the main altar. Low ceiling, dusty air, the scent of limestone and neglected wax seals. You duck inside, guided by the flicker of your oil lamp and the sheer force of stubborn curiosity. It's cold, quiet. Your sandals echo with every step. Baskets and crates line the walls, sealed and stamped, long forgotten. You find the stone chest marked Vision Records, Nanshe, and open it with care. Inside, dozens of small soapstone tablets, each inscribed with someone's divine dream. You sort through them gently. A fisherman's vision of a boat made of stars. A priestess's nightmare about flying eels. One that just says, "Don't eat the yellow figs." And then you find it. A dream recorded by a junior scribe named Lou Gimmel, dated vaguely, written sloppily. "I saw a field of blood and barley. 2 oxen walked through the flood, and Nanshe rose from the water pointing south. I awoke and knew they must go." That's it. No further explanation, no approval, no post-dream follow-up. You shake your head. This isn't enough. Not for removing livestock from temple inventory. But someone must have believed it, or found it convenient. You tuck the tablet back and quietly exit the vault. No need to stir the temple authorities tonight. But you'll note it all in your own ledgers, quietly, discreetly, as a pending inquiry. Just in case those oxen ever show up again, with interest. Outside, the sky is a canvas of deep indigo and dull bronze. The stars are just beginning to appear, blinking through the haze like tired gods peeking out from their celestial hammocks. You walk slowly through the temple grounds, hands dusty, head full. Back at your chamber, you light a single oil lamp and begin recording the day's work. Not just the audits, but the oddities, the fig poem, the oxen mystery, the possibly cursed cucumbers. It all goes into your personal clay scroll, a quiet log of things that don't fit into the official record. You seal the tablet with your owl and barley symbol. Let future scribes wonder. Tomorrow, you'll deal with it all again. But tonight, you rest. Sleep doesn't come easy in Ur, not with the mosquitoes, not with the heat, and certainly not when your dreams feature prophetic oxen and the judging gaze of Nanshe. You stir on your mat, a reed fan limp in one hand, the heavy air sticking to your skin like second-hand wool. Outside, someone coughs. Somewhere nearby, a dog argues with a goat. Night in the city isn't quiet, it's just differently noisy. When the morning bell finally echoes through the courtyard, you feel like you've aged a decade. But you're up. You're always up. That's your job. You splash water on your face from the communal basin and chew a piece of dried date to fool your stomach into thinking it's breakfast. There'll be real food later. Maybe you've got a meeting first. It's not one you're looking forward to. You step out into the narrow alleys of the temple complex, moving quickly now. Today's task? Appease a minor official from the governor's office. They've sent a representative, again, about inconsistencies in the latest tribute tallies. And by inconsistencies, they mean, we think you're hiding something, and we'd like to frown at you until you admit it. The meeting is held in one of the temple's outer audience chambers, a shaded hall with thick pillars and thin patience. You arrive to find the official already seated, fanning himself with a palm leaf and wearing the expression of someone who suspects the clay in your tablets is too soft on purpose. He doesn't introduce himself, he just gestures. You are the lead records officer? Accountant, you reply, carefully polite, but yes. There are discrepancies in the last shipment log. You nod slowly. Yes, I have seen the same. He doesn't expect that. There's a beat of confusion. You almost feel bad for him. I was under the impression that this temple had received 12 shekels worth of lapis from the Dilmun traders. Only 10 are recorded in the official tablet. They were. 2 shekels worth arrived damaged. Unusable fragments. I logged them separately in the damage register. Want to see it? He does. You produce the tablet, slightly sticky from its brief time under your sleeping mat. He inspects it with the frown of a man who really wanted to catch someone lying and now has to settle for being mildly suspicious. These marks, he mutters, They don't look like the governor's style. They're temple standard, authenticated yesterday by the high priest's seal. A pause. He sighs through his nose. We'll need to verify that. You nod. Of course. The rest of the meeting continues in this fashion. Calm, mildly tense, but ultimately uneventful. You offer to prepare duplicate records for cross-checking. He promises a follow-up visit. You both know neither of you wants that. When he finally leaves, you exhale so hard your stylus falls out of your belt. You retrieve it with the silent dignity of someone clinging to the last thread of self-respect. Later that morning, you retreat to your usual scribing bench, hoping to get actual work done. You've barely started when Kudor plops down beside you, eyes wild, hair pointing in 5 directions. You are not going to believe this. Is this about the governor's man? No, it's the canal workers. They've gone on strike. You blink. Sumerians invented strikes. No, they perfected complaining. This is a full-blown stoppage, refusing to dredge the canal until the temple pays them in better beer. You rub your temples. Better than what? Yesterday's batch. It was chunky. You stare at him. Chunky. He nods. Someone didn't sieve the mash, and now the water level's dropping. If it doesn't get fixed by next moonrise, we'll lose irrigation on half the barley fields. You look at your half-finished tablet and at the distant sounds of increasingly passionate shouting. You're already standing before you consciously decide to. The canal site is a short walk from the temple, but the mood changes sharply. Gone is the sleepy air of scribes and incense. Here, it smells like mud, sweat, and passive-aggressive picket lines. A dozen workers sit on the edge of the canal, arms crossed, tools neatly stacked on the ground, as if to say, "See, we could work, we just won't." One of them, their unofficial leader, a wiry man named Taziru, spots you. "If you're here to write us up, don't bother." "I'm here to write something, preferably not an obituary for the barley harvest." He grins. "Talk, then." And so you do, carefully, calmly, like balancing a ledger with feelings. You ask what they want, really want. Turns out, it's not just the beer. It's a scheduling problem. Someone's been doubling shifts without recording them properly, and the workers think the temple's skimming off the top. That someone? A mid-tier overseer with a known fondness for gambling. You promise to audit the shifts personally. If they're right, you'll update the records and make sure the beer rations are adjusted to match the real labor. Taziro nods. "You're different," he says. You arch a brow. "Better?" "No, just more exhausted." "Fair." Back at the temple, you pull out the shift tablets, and sure enough, the patterns are off. 2 men marked as absent were definitely present because they also appear on the injury list. One man appears twice in the same hour, an impossible feat unless he's secretly Enki in disguise. You redo the calculations, reissue the schedule, and then, with grim satisfaction, assign the crooked overseer a surprise duty, washing amphorae. All of them. Justice Sumerian style. As the sun starts to dip, you return to your desk. The clay is warm under your fingers, the stylus glides a little easier. You make a note in your personal journal. Day 227, invented labor relations, possibly by accident. Kudur passes by, tossing a fig in the air. Heard you started a union. You shrug. Felt like the right time. He laughs. Better hope Nanshi doesn't send another dream. You're running out of oxen. You smile. Just a little. The temple bell chimes again, calling for evening prayers. You don't attend, someone else logs your name. Instead, you climb to the rooftop, where the warm breeze meets you like an old friend and the stars blink down, quiet and indifferent. Below, the city hums, and somewhere, out there, 2 oxen still haven't been accounted for. The morning arrives not so much with grace as with noise. You're jolted awake by the unmistakable braying of a donkey with personal grievances and absolutely no sense of restraint. It's outside your chamber window, chewing on a papyrus scroll someone definitely wasn't finished writing on. You mutter something about divine punishment and roll upright. There's barley porridge waiting in the common hall, lukewarm and somehow both too wet and too dry, but you shovel it in anyway. Calories are calories, even if they taste like regret. Today promises to be another long one, and your scrolls won't calculate themselves. You head out with your stylus tucked behind one ear and a fresh clay tablet under your arm. Your destination? The Southern Storage Annex. A low, wide building squatting like a lazy hippo behind the main temple wall. It's where the temple's grain reserves are kept. And today, you've been asked to audit them. Well, asked is generous. The high priest's assistant left a note on your sleeping mat that read simply, "Your skills are required in the South Annex. Bring fresh styluses." And patience. You bring both. Barely. As you arrive, 2 workers are already waiting, one tall and lanky, the other short and suspiciously covered in flour. They nod, open the thick wooden door, and the smell hits you instantly. Grain dust, mildew, and something that might be onion, or death. You step inside and squint. The annex is stacked high with reed-woven baskets, some sealed neatly with hardened clay, others clearly opened and resealed by hands that lacked both skill and shame. You sigh. This is going to be one of those audits. The first few rows go fine. You break open seals, count by handfuls, log quantities. Occasionally you find something mildly concerning, like grain sprouting early or baskets gnawed from below. But nothing illegal, nothing dramatic. Then you hit basket 76. It's marked barley, for emergency use only. That alone would be enough to raise an eyebrow, but what really catches your attention is the weight. It's too light. You lift the lid, and sure enough, half the contents are gone. No note, no seal, just a bit of dried mud on the rim, as if someone decided to help themselves and then took the scenic route out of the building. You glance around. There are muddy footprints leading away from the basket. You follow them instinctively, past rows of legitimate goods, into a smaller side chamber where surplus tools are kept, and there, tucked behind a broken sickle and a half-eaten pomegranate, is a pile of barley, haphazardly stashed, as though someone got spooked and bolted mid-crime. You call for the flour-covered assistant. He appears moments later, chewing what is definitely your missing pomegranate. "I found a stash," you tell him. He nods. "Not the first time. People get snacky." Snacky? It's barley. You can grind it, toast it, boil it, make cakes, or, he grins, ferment it. You blink. Wait, are people siphoning off temple grain to make secret beer? He nods solemnly. Historians still argue whether it started with the night guards or the granary priests, but the moon beer's legendary. You don't want to be impressed, but a secret moonshine ring running under the temple's grain annex? That's impressive. Still illegal, but impressive. You confiscate the stash and log the tampering in your records, making a mental note to suggest tighter seals, maybe with reed tags, something annoying to undo. But the flour-covered assistant doesn't leave. He lingers. "There's more," he says quietly. "Not just barley theft. Someone's been mixing records." You pause. Mixing? He nods. Rewriting old tablets. Just little things. Dates, units, destination cities, but enough that we noticed some deliveries looping back into the temple that were supposed to be exported. You frown. That's not a clerical error. That's laundering. Who, you ask? He shrugs. Lots of hands in the grain pot. You chuckle dryly. That's not comforting. Back in your scribe's nook, you compare records, side by side, tablet after tablet. At first glance, nothing screams treachery. But when you look closer, the flower-covered assistant was right. Several shipments allegedly destined for Lagash were later re-recorded as temple reserves. Not once, not twice, 5 times. And the stylus marks? They vary. Some strokes are thick and heavy, standard temple scribe work. Others are thinner, loopier, almost careless. A different hand. You know what this means. Forgery. But here's the problem. Accusing someone of altering temple records isn't like pointing out they overwatered the bean garden. It's serious, public, political. If you're wrong, your own career, already one miscounted ox away from disaster, could crumble. So you do what Sumerian accountants do best. You collect more evidence. You spend the afternoon pulling archived inventories from dusty crates, cross-checking routes, weights, and temple seals. You find 3 more cases, all linked to the same caravan supervisor, Nibiru, a charismatic logistics clerk known for his elegant handwriting and occasional appearances at high-level dinners he has no business attending. Suspicious. Very suspicious. You update your notes, but you don't report him yet, not until you're sure. That night, while the city cools and the stars gather like gossiping old men, you sit on your rooftop with a fresh tablet in your lap. You sketch out the web. Grain missing, records altered, deliveries rerouted, and oxen still suspiciously absent. It's all connected. You're just not sure how yet. But you will be. Tomorrow, you think, you'll pay a visit to the caravan yard, ask some quiet questions, maybe inspect the wheels, see who's moving what and why. Below, the city sighs. A dog barks. Someone shouts, "That's my beer!" followed by a very convincing splash. You grin. Sumer never sleeps. But you'll try. By dawn, you're already on the move. The streets of Ur are quieter in the early hours, the thick summer air still tolerable before the sun decides to press down on everything like a hot, angry lid. You slip past a fruit seller setting up baskets of bruised dates, past a priest chanting to an audience of uninterested pigeons, and finally through the eastern gate into the caravan yards. This part of the city is less glamorous than the ziggurat-dotted skyline you usually haunt. It smells of sun-baked wood, animal droppings, and dried fish, and every other cart looks like it's one pothole away from collapsing into splinters. The beasts of burden, oxen, donkeys, mules, and that one goat that somehow pulls half a cart, grumble in their pens. And scattered between them all are the handlers, porters, drivers, and, most importantly, clerks. You're here for Nibiru. You find him exactly where you expected, under the shade of a leaning shed, dictating to 2 younger scribes as they scratch marks into palm leaf notepads. He looks up as you approach and smiles that politician's smile, the one that shows just enough teeth to be friendly, not enough to be legally binding. "Ah," he says, "the numbers man. To what do I owe the displeasure?" "Just a friendly visit. Heard your last grain shipment was flawless." "When is it not?" You hold up a small tablet from your satchel. "This one wasn't. It left here with 30 baskets, returned with 32. Very generous of Lagash to send grain back." Nibiru's grin doesn't falter, but his eyes twitch, just slightly. "Odd. Must have been a mislabel." You nod. "Of course. Easy mistake. Though your seal is on both the outbound and the inbound logs." He shrugs.
efficiency. You're about to push further when a loud crack startles both of you. One of the oxen has kicked over a bucket, and its driver is now involved in a shouting match with a merchant whose sandals are covered in dung. It's chaos, and Nibiru uses it expertly.
"I'd love to chat more," he says, already backing away, "but I'm late for the governor's meeting. These barley exports won't politic themselves." And just like that, he vanishes into the crowd, leaving you standing among disgruntled livestock and even more disgruntled drivers. But it's not a total loss, because one of the younger scribes he was dictating to, still sitting there, and now nervously watching you. You sit beside him on the overturned crate. "What's your name?" "Simti," he replies, voice barely above a whisper. "You knew?" He nods. You pull a small date from your pocket and offer it like a peace treaty. He takes it. "Listen," you say gently, "I don't care about politics. I care about numbers. Someone's playing with ours." He chews thoughtfully. "I just copy what I'm told, but sometimes Nibiru brings tablets that already have entries on them, and I'm supposed to recopy them exactly." "Do you?" He hesitates. "Sometimes the numbers are wrong. He says to smooth them out." You nod. That's confirmation enough. You let him go and spend the rest of the morning wandering the caravan yard, noting which carts are loaded too light, which crates are sealed too cleanly. You even spot one labeled clay tools, fragile, that rattles suspiciously like barley. You make a mental note to check that one when no one's looking. Back at the temple by midday, you drag your dusty sandals and dusty suspicions through the scribe's corridor, where Kadur is, once again, pretending to organize things by randomly shuffling tablets. "You look like someone tried to teach a goat accounting." "Thanks," I mumble. "I'm fine, just unraveling a conspiracy." Kadur's eyes light up. "Finally! I was getting bored." You fill him in. Nibiru, the returns, the forged logs. He leans back, chewing on a reed stylus like it's a detective's pipe. "So, what's your next move? Slander? Espionage? Dramatic rooftop confrontation?" "I was thinking paperwork." He sighs. "You're the least fun whistleblower. But you do have a plan." That evening, under the flicker of oil lamps, you do what you do best. You draft new tablets, clean ones. You copied the suspect records and mark the discrepancies. You highlight patterns. You even prepare a simplified diagram for the high priest, because last time he asked what unit inflation meant and you had to explain it using lentils. You arrange everything into a neat stack and seal them with your own reed mark. But you don't deliver them yet, because something's still missing. Something about the oxen. You return to the livestock pens under cover of darkness. A favor to the temple stable boy and a generous date bribe gets you access to the registry. And there it is. 2 oxen, marked as sacrificed for ceremonial use, still alive and munching happily behind the grain baskets. Which means Nibiru's been padding the sacrificial logs too. You laugh. Out loud. Because of course it wasn't just barley. It never is. If someone's bold enough to smuggle grain under the governor's nose, they're bold enough to save a few oxen and pocket the offerings. You spend the rest of the night updating your report, scribbling so furiously your stylus snaps in half. Kudor brings you a fresh one and a leftover onion cake. "I assume this means Nibiru's doomed?" he asks. "Doomed," you confirmed through a mouthful of extremely stale onion. The stars begin to fade. The sky shifts from black to violet, then violet to tired gray. You've been up all night, but you've got what you need. Tomorrow, you'll present your findings to the high priest. And tomorrow night, maybe, just maybe, you'll sleep. Morning breaks with an ominous quiet. No donkey braying, no fruit vendor bickering over date prices. Just stillness, like the city is collectively holding its breath. Or maybe that's just you. You tighten your belt, smooth the clay dust from your tunic, and head toward the temple's administrative court, the sanctum of sandal-wearing authority and long passive-aggressive silences. Today's the day you blow the barley lid off Nibiru's whole operation. Or possibly the day you mysteriously fall off the ziggurat stairs and no one quite investigates why. At the main chamber entrance, the guards let you through with the kind of expression that says, "We know you're not important, but someone in there thinks you are." You step inside, clutching your seized evidence bundle like it's your personal shield against divine retaliation. The high priest is seated in the center, flanked by a handful of temple elders and two scribes who look like they haven't blinked since the last equinox. Nibiru stands off to the side, perfectly groomed and exuding the smug energy of a man who believes paperwork is beneath him. You bow, just deep enough to be respectful, but not deep enough to seem desperate, and begin your presentation. You walk them through the forged tablets, the phantom grain, the magical sacrificed oxen still happily chewing cud 2 courtyards away. You even bring out the stylus comparison tablets and the neat diagram of how the barley made its scenic loop from to Lagash and back to with none of it actually reaching the export docks. Nibiru starts interrupting almost immediately. Fabrication. These are unverified copies. You lift one clay tablet delicately. Right here. Dug out of the caravan yard sealed crate, complete with your reed seal. He falters. A whisper ripples through the chamber, like someone just opened a scroll titled "Very Illegal Things Nibiru Probably Did." The high priest raises a hand. He's silent for a long time. Then finally, historians still argue whether temple grain has ever been truly secure from entrepreneurial adjustments. You're not sure if that's support or a veiled insult. But then he adds, "Your diligence is noted. This will be investigated with seriousness and discretion." Nibiru is dismissed, not dramatically, no shackles or fiery speeches, but with a polite handwave and a cold, permanent silence that tells everyone else in the room he's done. You're asked to stay behind, which honestly makes your stomach churn harder than fermented turnip wine. Once the elders are gone and it's just you, the high priest, and the 2 silent scribes, who may or may not be statues, the high priest finally speaks again. "You've shown skill and restraint." You nod. "I try not to yell about grain unless necessary." He almost smiles. "There is a vacancy. Overseer of the southern storehouses. It would mean more responsibility. And more headaches, but also more status, more scrolls, possibly better porridge." You accept. He nods once. "Begin tomorrow. And well done." You exit into the bright, blinding sunlight feeling equal parts triumphant and mildly nauseated. You've done it. You've exposed corruption, secured a promotion, and somehow didn't end up fed to lions. But now what? You head back toward your scribe nook, where Kudar greets you with mock applause. "Look at you, walking like someone who has authority now. Did they let you keep your old stylus, or is it solid gold now?" You toss him the leftover onion cake from your satchel. "Let's just say I get to organize more clay tablets now." He whistles. "Careful, too much power and you'll end up like Nibiru, stylish, corrupt, and out of work." You grin. "I'll settle for stylish." But there's no time to relax. With Nibiru gone, the southern annex is in bureaucratic shambles. The remaining staff don't know what they're responsible for, the inventory is weeks out of date, and someone's taken to storing pickled fish next to the incense baskets, which should honestly be punishable by law. You dive in. For the next few days, you draft new inventory charts, reorganize shelves, introduce a system of color-coded tags using dyed clay slips. Cooter helps, begrudgingly, and mostly for access to the incense fish. One particularly humid afternoon, while you're scraping mold off a storage crate, a runner arrives with a note. You wipe your hands on your tunic and open it. It's from Simti, the nervous young scribe from the caravan yard. The note reads, "They're still moving things, quietly, night carts, smaller loads, different route. Check the west gate." You sigh so hard your sandals squeak. Because of course, you were just starting to think things might return to normal, but crime, like mud, seeps into every crack. You leave Cooter in charge, just label things, don't light anything on fire, and make your way to the west gate that night. It's quiet, peaceful, stars overhead, a breeze rolling in from the river, and then you hear it, the creak of wheels. You crouch behind a pile of broken amphora as a narrow two-wheeled cart rolls slowly through the gate. It's unmarked, pulled by a lone donkey and guided by a hooded figure who is way too sneaky to be legitimate. You follow at a distance, heart thumping like a badly tuned drum. They head past the outer temple wall, down toward the lesser docks, not the main port where merchants load by the hundreds, but the little one where fishermen offload their catch and priests occasionally bless passing barges. The figure unloads a sack, then another, slings them onto a moored boat, and just like that, they're gone. You sneak closer, peek inside one of the sacks. Barley, still warm from the annex. So Nibiru might be gone, but someone's picked up the barley baton. You don't intervene, not yet. You're not sure who's behind this. It could be a rogue priest, a lazy guard, even someone inside your own crew. Instead, you return to the temple, brain buzzing. You update your notes, add new arrows to the corruption chart. You even sketch the sneaky donkey, because no one that loud should be that stealthy. And you plan. Not for revenge, for clarity. Because it turns out, in Sumer, corruption isn't a one-time scandal, it's a sport, and you've just become a professional scorekeeper. You begin the next morning with barley on the brain and an inexplicable headache behind your left eye. Your new title, Overseer of the Southern Storehouses, comes with a lot of ceremonial respect and almost no useful help. You have 3 assistants now, which sounds impressive until you meet them. One is constantly chewing on something, you don't know what. One has never learned numbers beyond 10, and the third keeps suggesting that maybe we burn the records and start fresh. So yes, glorious promotion. You settle into your corner of the temple with a hot clay mug of watered beer and the ledgers from last week. There's a pattern emerging, a new one. The night cart, the rerouted barley, and now 2 missing crates of cloth that should have been sent to the textile quarter, but instead seem to have vanished into the ether, or into someone's side hustle. You pace. Cooter watches you like a cat watching a frog with delusions of grandeur. You've got that murder board face again. What now? Barley's growing legs? You ignore him, mostly because he's right. There's another player in this game, someone lower level, smart enough to be subtle. You don't have a name, but you have a cart, small, 2 wheels, no temple markings, and that ridiculous donkey. You decide to spend the evening shadowing the annex again. You leave a note for Cooter. If I'm not back by dawn, avenge me, or at least feed the goat. He scribbles something beneath it. Don't die, you owe me 5 lentils. The night is warm, a slow breeze carrying the smell of baked bricks and river silt. You crouch near the outer wall, tucked beneath a stack of amphorae, and wait. And wait. Then, movement. Same cart, same donkey, but a different driver. You narrow your eyes. This one's shorter,
moves faster, hooded again. You follow at a careful distance, sticking to the shadows like a particularly nosy cat. The cart turns not toward the docks this time, but toward the southern field terraces. Odd. There's no real trade route out that way, just clay pits and the occasional reed harvester. The cart stops by a storage shed that technically belongs to the temple, but hasn't been used in seasons. You wait until the driver disappears inside, then creep up, heart pounding like a frantic drummer who missed his cue. Inside, you find sacks, dozens, all marked with temple seals, all recently packed. Barley, cloth, bronze tools, even incense. This is more than just petty theft. This is full-scale skimming, an entire shadow operation built inside your own jurisdiction. You quietly back away, nearly tripping over a snoozing dog that growls with the kind of warning that says, "I will bark, but I won't chase unless you're made of sausages." You sprint home in the moonlight, breath ragged, sandals slapping against stone. You found the den. Now you need the wolf. Next morning, you recruit Kudor, who's both thrilled and terrified. You also bring in Simpti, the young scribe. He's nervous, but eager. You assign them lookout shifts with bribes in the form of honey bread and permission to doodle on broken tablets. Then you get clever. You create a false shipment, 40 units of barley. You file it, stamp it, announce it at the temple, but the real shipment never leaves the annex. That night, the shadow cart shows up to collect it. You and Kudor follow, carefully. You're halfway to the shed when Simpti, stationed on a rooftop, whistles the signal. 2 notes. That means someone new is there. You peer in. 2 drivers this time. One is the short figure from before, the other? You blink. It's Aruru, one of the mid-level priests, known mostly for his excellent singing voice and his utterly average administrative skills. He's organizing the stash like a man who's done this before, calm, efficient, completely unaware that 3 nosy accountants are about to ruin his month. You don't confront them, not yet. You mark their faces, their voices, the way they seal the crates. Then you quietly return and document everything. By dawn, your new report is complete. It's beautiful. Stylus straight columns, wax-stamped observations, one section labeled Shed of Suspicious Shuffling. You include sketches, witness logs, and a map with a small doodle of the donkey, Kudor insisted. You hand it to the high priest, who reads it in total silence. Finally, he looks up. You are very thorough. You nod. This Aruru is popular. Removing him will raise questions. You wait. I will need time. It'll make it clean, he says. You are dismissed, but not before he says, almost quietly, "You've done well. Again." Outside, Kudor pats your shoulder. So we won, or do we wait until someone else takes his place and the donkey wears a different hood? Both, you say. We won this game, and we get ready for the next. Think I can get that donkey on our side? Please don't. You walk back to the annex with your team. Yes, team. Feeling like maybe, just maybe, Sumer's ancient accounting system has a fighting chance. Because of you. Because of your ragtag crew. And because corruption might be eternal, but so is the bureaucratic urge to fix it. You pass a street vendor selling roasted chickpeas. You buy 2 bags. One for you, one for the donkey. You've earned it. You start waking up before dawn now. Not because you have to, but because your brain refuses to rest. You've become one of those people. The ones who lie in bed calculating barley to bribe ratios and silently judging the crooked geometry of poorly stacked crates. But there's a rhythm to it now, a strange, dusty kind of peace. You arrive early at the annex, before the sun can properly bake the mud brick walls.
The morning light creeps in, revealing the quiet order of your new domain. Sealed jars, stacked tablets, rope-tied bundles with labels so neat you almost want to kiss them. Cooter has even stopped complaining out loud. Mostly. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that there's still something missing. Not more corruption, though obviously that's still lurking somewhere, but something else, a bigger picture, a reason all these pieces were able to move so easily, undetected, for so long. You decide to retrace it from the beginning. You grab a fresh tablet, sit in your corner with your favorite reed stylus, yes, you have a favorite now, this is who you are, and begin sketching the full web, every name, every barley sack, every misrouted delivery since the last flood season. By midday, it's sprawling, chaotic, and, horrifyingly, elegant. There's a structure, not just opportunistic theft, but a network of errors working together. One porter dropping off an extra sack, one priestess misreading an inventory slip, a second scribe adjusting temple tax records just slightly. They weren't all in on it, but they were all used by it. It's genius, and it's terrifying, because it means there's a central planner, someone high enough to have oversight, but low enough to remain invisible. Someone better at this game than Nibiru ever was. That afternoon, you sit through a temple logistics council meeting. It's 73 minutes of sandals squeaking and arguments about fish paste allocations. You zone out. Then you look up and see her, Shulgi's assistant, Priestess Nanala, always quiet, always organized, the kind of person whose presence is mistaken for a shadow and whose handwriting can humble entire scribal schools. She's the one who handles requisitions, who signs off on the final dispatch tablets, who corrected one of your early reports and slipped in the wrong seal without you noticing until 3 days later. You watch her, heart thudding. Could it be her? Historians still argue whether women in ancient Mesopotamian administration held power quietly or invisibly, but if Nanala is what you think she is, the answer might be both. You return to your quarters and spend the evening combing her handwriting. You compare tablet seals, stylus pressure, unusual word pairings. You find 5 matches, documents you thought were reviewed by different officials. All carry her linguistic fingerprint. Subtle, elegant, almost invisible. You don't feel like you're at war with your own profession. You feel like a scribe again. A good one. You start your day with a rare luxury. No immediate fires to put out. No surprise inventory gaps. No donkeys tied to crates they shouldn't be. For the first time in what feels like an age, you get to breathe. The morning hum of the annex has become familiar music. The scratch of styluses, the clink of pots, the grumble of Cooter attempting to lift something far too heavy for his build. Simti whistles while copying grain tallies, occasionally slipping in doodles of particularly muscular goats. And you're sketching something radical, a new filing system. Before you panic, no, it's not just rows of different colored pots or clever new shelf labels. It's a whole method, a way to sort inventory by urgency, perishability, and temple priority. It's the kind of thing that will either make you a legend or get you crushed under an avalanche of confused clay tablets. You call it the 3-read rule. Items are ranked with 1, 2, or 3 tiny read marks, visible at a glance, scannable even in dim light. Simti loves it immediately. Cooter grunts something that might be approval. Even the high priest mumbles, pragmatic, which from him is practically a standing ovation. You pilot it on the northern storehouse. After 1 week, the unloading time for deliveries drops by 2/3. The porters are delighted. The scribes are slightly suspicious, probably worried they won't be able to sneak naps between shipments anymore.
Then comes the real test. A barge arrives unexpectedly. No tablet, no notice. Full of wine jars, baskets of dried fish, and a whole cage of extremely disgruntled ducks. You step forward, stylus in hand. You and your team sort, label, and store the goods in under an hour. The captain stares, visibly impressed. You people usually take 3 and lose at least 1 duck. We still might, but we'll lose it efficiently. He chuckles and sails off, and you add logistics wit to your mental resume. Meanwhile, word spreads. Other temple districts start requesting copies of the 3-reed rule. One even sends a gift basket, mostly onions, but still, it's a gesture. You begin hosting short training sessions where visiting scribes come to observe. Kudor teaches them not to store fish near incense. Simti offers tablet decoration tips. You mostly answer questions like, "What do I do if I drop a crate on my superior's foot?" Answer? Apologize. Immediately, possibly with beer. But amid all this mild administrative glory, something else stirs. A letter arrives. Clay, of course, sealed with a mark you don't recognize. You crack it open and scan the stylized cuneiform. It's an invitation. You've been asked to consult for the House of Grain, a massive distribution center near Uruk, several days' travel away. Apparently, someone there heard about your revolutionary approach and wants advice on how to replicate it. You blink. Uruk is huge, loud, complicated. You've heard stories about storage complexes larger than entire city blocks. You've also heard stories about people getting lost in their archives and re-emerging 3 days later with a beard and a tablet marked miscellaneous. It's tempting, but terrifying. You bring it to the high priest, expecting a flat refusal. Instead, he leans back and says, "You've earned a field trip." Kudor almost chokes on his bread when you tell him. Simti claps like he's seen a street magician. The goat, yes, you still have the goat, chews serenely on your cloak hem. So, you prepare. You draft quick reference tablets, design a carry case for styluses, and write down every single item you might need. You even pack spare reed pens because the last thing you want is to get caught in Uruk without your signature flair. The journey is long, sun-blasted and bumpy. You bounce along in a reed-lined cart, watching the floodplain shimmer in the distance like an overbaked dream. At night, you sleep under the stars, lulled by the gentle snort of the donkey and Kudor's snores. When you arrive, Uruk lives up to the rumors. Towering walls, temple spires, vendors shouting over the cries of caged peacocks. You pass priests in embroidered robes and merchants leading trains of camels so loaded they look like ambulatory storage units. Then you see it, the House of Grain. It's monumental. Rows and rows of silos, record halls the size of ziggurats, workers moving like ants through a sea of amphora and crates. And yet the chaos is real. You're greeted by a hurried-looking administrator who gestures wildly at a pile of tablets. "No one can find anything," he cries. "We lost a whole shipment of millet last week. Millet! How do you even lose millet?" You set to work. You spend the first day just watching, then mapping, then asking questions no one seems to have considered before, like, why is the clay room next to the fish room? Or why is this shelf labeled maybe barley? You reorganize 3 critical sections. You retrain the dispatchers. You explain the 3-reed rule using actual reeds, which delights the scribes and confuses one goat who wandered in from somewhere. By the end of the week, the chaos has begun to settle. Not vanish. Uruk will never be calm, but sharpen. As you leave, one of the senior scribes presses a hand to their chest and says, "You made it make sense." You nod, tired, dusty, fulfilled. You return home to Lagash feeling older somehow, but not in a bad way. Kudor greets you with a flat, "Took you long enough," and Simpti gifts you a new stylus carved with little barley heads. You hang up your travel cloak and look around. Same annex, same walls. But you're not the same. You're the accountant who made Uruk breathe easier. And honestly, that's not boring at all.
You never thought you'd say this, but you kinda miss the chaos. Uruk's madness had a certain grandeur to it. It was like trying to tame a stampede with a papyrus scroll and a firm tone of voice. Now, back in Lagash, everything feels manageable. Too manageable. Which should be a good thing, should feel like success. But instead, you find yourself tapping your stylus against the clay, waiting for something unexpected to break. It doesn't. For a while, life hums on like a well-balanced set of ledger columns. Grain in, grain out. Temples restocked, rations tallied. You almost become nostalgic for the days of duck smuggling and sabotage. Almost. Instead, you pour that restless energy into refinement. You begin compiling a guidebook, an actual full system of best practices, storage alignment, delivery tracking, scribe seating arrangements for minimal elbow conflict. It's drier than the sands of Urdu, but you make it a little fun by including anecdotes. Always double-check crate labels. Ask Nibiru about the fish oil incident of month IX if you want details. Even the high priest is impressed. He starts floating your name around more publicly. The architect of order, someone calls you at a temple banquet. You blush so hard you nearly choke on a pomegranate seed. But with visibility comes scrutiny. One day, you receive a formal message, sealed with the mark of the Temple Council. They want you to conduct an audit of the festival accounts. At first, you think, great, no problem. You've reviewed temple ledgers before, a few burnt barley tallies, a slightly inflated duck count, the usual. But this is different. These are the festival funds, the allocations for the New Year's celebration, a citywide event with sacrifices, processions, feasts, and public games. It's where the temple's spiritual heart and social face come together. And the numbers? They don't add up. You sit with the tablets late into the night, eyes blurry, stylus tapping, brain slowly unraveling threads that were never meant to be touched. The same patterns emerge, small discrepancies, clever miscounts, overestimated purchases. At first, you suspect it's just standard festival inflation. Vendors always mark up prices when they know the temple's buying. But then you find something strange, a side account, hidden behind a deliberately mislabeled record, a grain requisition that should have gone to the West Quarter but never did. The shipment was redirected, sealed by... Oh, come on, Nibiru. Yes, him again. Apparently, exile didn't dull his skills. And it gets better. He's been coordinating with festival quartermasters to funnel resources into a contingency stockpile. But when you visit the storeroom listed on the record, it's empty, not even dust. You sigh, deeply, loudly, because once again, you're going to have to unpick a mess, and this time it's buried under ceremonial flower garlands and 3 layers of temple bureaucracy. You bring it to the council, gently, respectfully, with very nice clay charts. One priest turns pale. Another loudly insists it's probably just pre-allocated overflow. A third mumbles something about divine mysteries and nearly trips over his robe while backing away. You're told to leave it for now. You don't. You visit the port records office, bribe a tired dock worker with date cakes, find out that Nibiru's name is still turning up on shipping slips even though he's supposedly banned from temple service. Then you track down a vendor, one you remember from years back, always too cheerful with suspiciously exact prices. He's gone, moved north, or so they say. But his stall is now run by someone else, someone who seems oddly familiar with temple requisitions. You spend the next week assembling a map, not literal, but financial, a web of tablets, fake seals, overcharges, and missing goods. Every arrow points back to one source, a private warehouse just outside the city limits. You and Kudor make the trip yourselves. It's not a warehouse, it's a compound. Storage pens, hired guards, ledgers locked in clay safes. It's a full-blown shadow temple, the kind of place where grain is converted into silver, silver into favors, favors into influence. You recognize one of the guards, used to be a temple porter, fired for disobedience. Now he's carrying a spear and doesn't blink when you introduce yourself. Nibiru appears 15 minutes later. He looks exactly as smug as you remember. "Well, if it isn't the accountant who ruined my retirement," he says. You smile. "You've built quite the operation." "He's optimized what the temple refused to," he replies, hands open. "You don't stop demand by cutting supply. You meet it, privately, efficiently." He invites you in for wine. You decline. Instead, you ask, "Why keep doing this? You could have left it all behind." He shrugs. "It's not about barley anymore. It's about structure, systems, the satisfaction of control." You nod. You understand that. You really do. You leave with a full inventory of what he's been hoarding, more detailed than he realizes thanks to a quick peek at his account tablets. The next day, you deliver it to the council. No theatrics, just facts. And this time, they act. Guards raid the compound. The warehouse is seized. Some temple officials are quietly retired. Nibiru? He vanishes before the arrest. Of course he does. You'll probably be finding shadow ledgers with his mark for years. But the temple breathes easier. And so do you. You sit on the roof that evening with Simpti and Kudor, sharing roasted chickpeas and stories. "Think he'll come back?" Simpti asks. You smirk. He never really left. The three of you watch the stars rise, and you think about systems. How fragile they are, and how strong they can be if someone cares enough to hold the seams together. There's a rumor floating around Lagash now, one that people whisper in the market stalls and among the temple corridors. They say you've made the city run smoother than ever, that your ink-stained hands are what keeps the temple upright, that you once outsmarted a festival embezzlement ring without even breaking a sweat. You would deny all of this, of course, except maybe the sweat part. What you have done is less glamorous. A lot of standing, a lot of sorting, and a deeply concerning amount of squinting at tablets in poor lighting. But yes, the temple records are cleaner. The inventory tallies match. No one's lost a duck in weeks. You now sit at the very top of the annex, literally. The high priest has granted you the empty upper room above the main scribe hall. It's hot, slightly dusty, and comes with an uninterrupted view of the rooftops, the Euphrates in the distance, and, if you lean at the right angle, the goat pen. The very same goat still somehow alive, still chewing through twines like it's gourmet. It's peaceful up here. The sounds of the city waft in gently, sandals slapping against packed earth, distant flute music, someone yelling about onions. The light is perfect for writing, and more importantly, for thinking.
You're working on your master scroll now, your complete system, start to finish. Inventory classification, warehouse zoning logic, transaction indexing. A legacy, basically. Not that you'd call it that out loud. And today, something strange happens. A young scribe knocks on the frame of your open door. He's nervous, maybe 15 summers old, reed pen tucked behind one ear, ink smudge on his elbow. You vaguely recognize him from the apprentice scrolls. Can I watch you work? You raise an eyebrow. Why? He fidgets. They said you know how to keep everything from falling apart. That's an overstatement. You just delay the collapse in a slightly more stylish way. But you nod, pull out a second stool, pass him a scrap tablet. Start by copying this, you say, pointing to a ratio chart. Don't worry about neatness. Worry about clarity. He grins and sits. For the next hour, you dictate while he scratches lines. Occasionally, he asks a question so insightful it makes you pause. And that's when you realize you're not just managing grain anymore. You're mentoring. Soon, others come. Simti helps teach them the shorthand glyphs. Kudor demonstrates crate stacking angles with the theatrical flair of a market juggler. One day, a retired priest even sits in to learn how the 3-reed rule works. You consider charging tuition, but settle for sweetbread tributes instead. You still have off days, times when the numbers swim in your vision, or when 2 tablets contradict each other so hard you briefly consider just eating one of them. But those days are fewer now, because for every problem, there's a process. For every setback, a scribe who knows what to do. You've built more than a system. You've built resilience. And quietly, without much fuss, the temple offers you something rare, a full-time position as keeper of records, a new title created just for you. You accept, mostly because they let you design your own seal. It's a stylus crossed with a grain stalk, understated, elegant, slightly smug. You hold your first official ceremony the following week. A boring little thing, mostly ink and oaths, with too many witnesses and not enough snacks. But as you press your new seal into wet clay for the first time, something shifts. It's not pride, or at least not only pride. It's a deep, slow comfort, the kind that settles into your bones like the heat of afternoon sun on mud brick. You've spent years holding order together with bare fingers and clever tricks. Now it holds itself. That night, as you walk home through the winding alleys of Lagash, everything feels slightly brighter. Or maybe that's just the oil lamps, flickering to life one by one. You pass the courtyard where the priests used to argue about soap rations. It's quiet now. You see the courtyard goat sleeping under a fig tree. Still here. You reach your door, hear the rustle of tablets shifting on the shelf, the soft murmur of Simti dictating a new entry to a sleepy assistant. The life you've built hums around you, solid and sweet. And you, former novice, accidental investigator, semi-consensual mentor, duck wrangler extraordinaire, you smile. Because today, for the first time in a long time, you don't have to worry about tomorrow. Someone else will take care of the tallies. Someone else will remember to double-check the barley. You finally get to rest. Wind down 300 words. The oil lamps burn low now. Outside, the hum of Lagash fades into a soft, pulsing silence, the kind that only ancient cities know. Even the river has quieted, its waters gliding like melted bronze beneath a star-drenched sky. Inside your little writing room, the clay has cooled. The styluses are stacked, the tablet shelves stand full, orderly and unmoving, like a quiet choir of memory.
You lean back, letting your eyes trace the patterns of cracked plaster above your head. It doesn't matter that the goat chewed your sandals again, or that the ledgers sometimes argue with themselves. It doesn't matter that Nibiru is probably out there scheming a comeback involving counterfeit incense. For now, there's only stillness. The air smells of dust, ink, and a faint breath of summer jasmine drifting in through the high window. Somewhere in the distance, a lullaby drifts upward. Maybe a mother rocking a restless child, maybe a prayer to the moon goddess. You breathe in and out. Your eyelids grow heavy, drawn down like the reed blinds in the market at dusk. Every breath you take settles you deeper, a slow descent into soft shadows and the easy rhythm of sleep. You've done enough today. More than enough. The city rests on its own now, and you, scribe, organizer, unintentional hero of barley logistics, you can rest too. Let the quiet hold you. Let the darkness wrap gently around your shoulders like a temple cloak at dusk. And as the stars above Lagash blink slowly overhead, you drift down, down, into dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.